going to start this morning with Ann Packham, who's going to, first of all, welcome to the University Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. And Ann is going to start us off this morning for committee moments.
Thanks, Joey. In the meantime, if you haven't already grabbed your chalice, we have a chalice lighting in a couple of minutes. So if you have it around your house or around your desk and you haven't found it, you can go and get it now. And before we try to get into the sort of spiritual part of the service, we like to give our committee chairs a chance to give a quick announcement. Now, we are having a very thorough kind of run through of what all the different committees do during our quarterly meeting, which is right after service today. It's going to be the same link you are right now. We'll have a very short break in between, maybe 5-10 minutes just for people to, go to the bathroom and get a snack. So if there are any committee chairs that wanted to give a quick announcement, let me know by raising your hand. I think I see John Mowbray first. John?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. On behalf of Facilities and Grounds, just wanted to recognize the following folks for coming out to work day and helping out. If I miss anybody, feel free to say you were there. But I'd like to recognize Lorraine Williams, Barry London, Dave Simons, Derek Catlin, Miak Buchanan, and Amy. If you were at the church for the food drive and you pitched in, I didn't see it, sorry, but recognize yourself. Thank you.
He was busy fixing sprinklers, y'all. He was in the back in the dirt.
Thanks, John. I think you guys had really good weather for the workday. I'm sorry I missed it because I had something else to do. All right, I think I see Judith with her hand raised.
Yeah, real quick, just for parents in the room, we have a guest in the RE classroom this afternoon, and we've pushed the class back to 1 o'clock as a result of the quarterly meeting. So first of all, parents with kids that are attending class will be at 1 p.m. We have a guest in the classroom from the Baha'i faith, and all ages are welcome in the classroom. So if you're curious after quarterly meeting and you'd like to attend, you may. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Judith. I see Marianne Feldheim next with her hand up.
Thank you, Ann. Social Action Committee, we have a couple of updates. First, we have created what we are calling our Faith in Action Legislative Ministry. And there is now a web page under contacts. If you go to the UU site under contacts, we're the leading one. Trista just created this. So on our new webpage, it talks about our partnership with Unitarian Universalist Justice Florida and Unitarian Universalist Association Justice and Inclusion Ministry. What each of these groups do is that they track legislation that either supports or in some way we need to oppose because it opposes our values. They send out action alerts. So on this page, there are ways for you to sign up for action alerts, which tell you what legislation is being considered, voted on, and the implications that we see to our values. There's also places for you to check on your Florida representatives, on your state and federal representatives. So please do check out this new webpage. We're very excited to share this, and we will be giving when session starts. Just so you know, March 2nd, Florida legislature begins their session. So we will be keeping everyone posted on legislation. And there are several pieces that are impacting our concern. As you remember, this year, we're focusing on housing insecurity. And there are several bills that we are in favor of that support things that will increase housing for individuals. And there are others that really are detrimental. So we will keep you apprised of that. And I'd like to turn it over now to either Kelly or to Joey to give you an update on the food drive.
Okay, I'll go since I'm unmuted. I will. We had a great day yesterday. I'll let Kelly cover that. I'm just letting you know that there are 2 more times now that you can donate. Tomorrow I will be at the church from 5 to 7. We could use more food always, folks. There is on our website under SAC, under the Social Action Committee, there is a place where you can click to see what are the most needed foods. I plan to get one more large box of baby food because I know that that's a big need. Let me see. I'll be there from 5 to 7 tomorrow. Kelly will be there again next week, but we will be packing up next Saturday. Kelly, you want to talk about yesterday?
Well, we had a great turnout yesterday, and again, Joey, I don't want to repeat everything that you've already mentioned, but we do have one more week for the food drive. So if you have not made a contribution, whether it's food items and or monetary contribution, you've got 1 week to do that. We've had a great turnout. I know that the SACS committee is extremely pleased. So far, I think this is a pretty impressive number. In terms of share the plate, the 40% that we've collected that will also go to Second Harvest is $340. So again, that's in addition to the funds we've already collected. So again, I'm just going to say a big thank you. We've got one more week, and yeah, please stop by and see us. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly, and the whole SAC committee. I see Marissa's got her hand up. Marissa, I assume it's for marketing. PR.
Thank you, Anne. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the marketing committee, I just wanted to let everyone know that we still do have some of our blue t-shirts that we did for the congregation. Martha, thank you for helping check those through yesterday. And we do have a few different sizes left. So they're extra large, large, medium, and small. So if anyone does still want to purchase or know someone who had mentioned in the past that they wanted to buy one but didn't get a chance to, they're available. They are $10 each, and there is an option to pay for them online. When you go online and you click the donate button, there's an option for the t-shirt as well. So feel free to check that out or contact me or Crystal if interested in purchasing any of these t-shirts. Thanks, everyone.
Doing a great job advertising the t-shirt. That's a good idea. And I saw in the chat that the parent support group is meeting tonight at 9. So if you're interested in that, there's a link in the chat. Any other committees? I'm scanning and I'm not seeing anybody.
Margie.
Oh, I see. Oh, Margie's got something to say for membership.
Good morning. If you're relatively new to our congregation and you are not receiving our newsletter, drop us a line from the website and we'll sign you up for notable news where you'll get information on all the different activities and groups that you can get involved in, like parent support group or men's group or meditation with Judith or inquiring minds. So let us know who you are and welcome to our congregation.
Thanks, Margie. Thanks for reminding me about women's group. We're going to meet in person again for a noontime park visit on March 5th. It's a Friday. So look for the details in the notable news as to the location. And I think that's it. I've just, I don't see anybody else. So I'm going to send it back to you, Joey.
Okay, thanks, Ann. All right. For my opening words this morning, I was lucky enough to have our Reverend Tracie, who is going to be speaking with us later, sent me some lovely words from Reverend Melvin Hoover, which seemed to work very well with our service today. And they are, we'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We can't control the future, but we can shape it and enhance the possibilities for our children and grandchildren. More than 6,000 of our Unitarian Universalist children are multiracial. We'll build a land where we bring good tidings to all. We can't discern in the present fullness of our actions and their impact, but we can be seekers in our time, exploring fully the crevices and cracks where knowledge and new insight might be found. We'll build a land building up ancient cities. We can explore our spectrum of relationships and confront our complacency and certainty about the way things are. Within our congregations, we can begin to review our mission and vision statements and how we might fulfill the promise of our heritage and our future. We'll build a promised land that can be. We can dare to face ourselves in our entirety, to feel the tears of the individuals and groups who feel marginalized, of the individuals and groups who risk and make mistakes. We'll build a land where peace is born, to listen to our frustrations and confusions from ministers in congregations who are seeking direction from struggling racial justice committee members. We'll build a land of people so bold to discover our capacities and capabilities that will empower and transform us. Come build a land, my people, we seek. And now for our opening words. I'm sorry, for our opening music. It's We'll Build a Land, which is a UU hymn from Singing the Living Tradition. The words by Barbara Zanotti, music by Carol McDade. And this arrangement is performed by one of my favorite churches, First Unitarian Church of Baltimore.
Just
hope you saw the guy in the bottom row there with a shirt that looked very multicolored. That's the Maryland flag all over his shirt. Just had to share that. Pretty cool. Anyway, we are now going to go to lighting of the chalice. I have my chalice right here to be lit. Oh, there it is. So if you will join with me in the words as they are on the screen. And in the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Thank you. I should turn so you can see my chalice. No, can't turn that much. All right. We'll now have
Joey, the affirmation.
our affirmation of our church, and this is kind of our I just wanted you all to say it with me so that even if you're reading it quietly, just think in your congregation gets together. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth and love, and to help one another. I turned this morning to the UUA worship web, which has amazing help for all service leaders if you ever need it. And this is a welcome words from Amanda Shrubner that I just felt were so appropriate for us this morning. If this is your first time here or your 101st time, we are glad you are here. This is for guests who are with us. If you carry the weight of a weary world on your shoulders, or you entered through the doors with a song in your heart and a skip in your step, we are glad you are here. If you are the loudest voice in the town square or the subtle hand behind the scenes, we are glad you are here. If you have failed once or 1,000 times, we are glad you are here. If you sing like angels or mumble behind the hymnal, we are glad you are here. This community is what it is because of your presence. So welcome. Welcome to the space of love, support, justice, compassion, fellowship, and worship. We are glad you are here. That's to our guests, but it's also to our congregants. We are glad you are here. Obviously, if you are a guest, we invite you to come back several times. We are a lay-led community. Our services vary from week to week. And while we are online now, we are hoping to be able to go back in person to our services very soon. And that would be at our church site. We'll move now to joys and concerns. And again, I went to the worship web, and Scott Phillips uses these words. Ours is a welcoming community where we find connection, a spiritual community where we find meaning. Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified, a caring community where our sorrows are lessened. We take this moment to reflect on our joys and sorrows and acknowledge the mutual support of our community. We are extremely fortunate to have Amanda Major serve as our director through this, kind of our mistress of ceremonies through Joys and Concerns. So I'll turn it over now to Amanda.
thanks to each of you for sharing a joy or a concern. Let us lift up what was spoken. Let us lift up what was unspoken. Let's lift it up into the light of love. Hold it there for just a silent moment. Okay, Joey, over to you whenever you're ready.
Thank you. We turn now to joys and concerns. We just did that, Joey. We turn now to time for all ages, a time where we make our attempt to bring the message of our service to everyone in our congregation, no matter their age. And so I turn this over to our religious education director, Judith Stein-Farrell.
Thank you, Joey. I appreciate that. I'm going to start with a little reading of a familiar story. See if it sounds familiar to you before I start sharing my screen a little bit. The sun did not shine. It was too wet to play. So we sat in the house all that cold, cold, wet day. Sounding familiar, everybody? Yeah, all right. So I sat there with Sally. We sat there, we two, and I said, how I wish we had something to do, too wet to go out and too cold to play ball. So we sat in the house and we did nothing at all. So I'm going to ask some questions, sort of rhetorical, although if you want to post in the chat, you're welcome to the answers. What did the kids need? Yeah. So we sat there. So all we could do was to sit. We did not like it, not one little bit. And suddenly we looked, and then we saw him step in on the mat. We looked and we saw him, the cat in the hat. He said to us, why do you sit there like that? I know it is wet and the sun is not sunny, but we can have fun, lots of good fun that is funny. Uh-oh. But they've got someone who stops them. But our fish said, no, no, make that cat go away. Tell the cat in the hat you do not want to play. Did they actually ask the cat to come and join them and help them? Was the cat let in the door? Did they open the door and invite that cat? All right. Look at me now, look at me now. It's fun to have fun, but you have to know how. I can hold up the cup and the milk and the cake. I can hold up these books and fish on the rake. I can hold the toy ship. Wait a minute, the fish on the rake. Did the fish want to be held up? Did the fish ask to be participate in this? I can hold a red fan. I can fan with the fan as I hop on the ball, and that is not all. Oh no, that is not all. Well, we all know what happens. The cat falls down, there's a mess, and then he opens the box. And Sally and I did not know what to do. So we had to shake hands with thing one and thing two, because of course they're polite young folk. We shook their two hands, but our fish said, no, no. Those things should not be in this house. Make them go. And then they get wise. So as fast as I could, I went after my net, and I said, with my net, I can get them. I bet with my net, I can get those things yet. Then I let down my net, and it came down with a plop. And I had them. At last, these two things had to stop. Then I said to the cat, now do as I say. You pack those things up and you take them away. Oh dear, said the cat. You did not like our game. Oh dear, what a shame, what a shame, what a shame. And I ask you all to consider the fact that the cat, now I'm seeing the messages, needed some boundaries. Good job, Paula. And that leads us into where our speaker, I hope, will take us later. Have a good Sunday and listen with open ears.
Thank you, Judith. Wonderful as always. It's time for our Interluden Offering. Our Share the Plate, as you've heard already, is still going to Second Harvest, for whom we have been collecting over the last couple of months. 40% of our share of the plate goes to them. The other part goes to the upkeep of the church. And folks, because, not just because, but because this is our community, we support it. Without your financial support, we would not be able to keep the lights on and do all of the other things that we need to do. So even though we're not physically at the church now, all of this stuff that we're being able to do, we still need to support that as well. So keep that in mind, please, as you give. You may go online to universityuu.org, which is our website. There's a donate button right there, which makes it easy to donate that way. Or our address is also at that site, universityuuf.org. And our address is there. So if you wish to send a check, you may do that as well. In the meantime, I believe we are having music from our wonderful Lou Murray, and we'll have a few moments to sit and contemplate. Aha. I guess we're back. I don't want to say, I think I may have gotten that mixed up. I don't think that was Lou Mary's, not that her music isn't wonderful as well, but I don't believe that was from Lou Mary's selection. Right now, though, is the main part of our service, and that is our address by the Reverend Tracie Barrett. We have had Reverend Barrett with us before. Her talk today, I think, is very pertinent to the times in which we live. And so I won't continue too much further, except to say we are so thrilled to have her back. Thank you, Reverend Barrett. And would you please begin with, Are We Aware?
Thank you, Joey. In 1966, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave the Ware Lecture at our General Assembly, and he challenged us to not sleep through the revolution. He had specific tasks the church needed to do to stay awake. His specific tasks were to instill a world perspective, to reaffirm the essential immorality of racial segregation, to refute the idea that there are superior and inferior races, and to move into the arena of social action. Now, in 1966, I'm sure we as Unitarian Universalists thought we could do that. After all, we had answered the call and came to Selma in 1965. Now, in 2021, I'm sure that we as Unitarian Universalists think we can still do that. After all, we're the first to call out white supremacy culture and racism inherent in our society, right? Perhaps out there. But here, within our denomination, not so much. Today, we're going to go on a journey through our history as a denomination, and it will be uncomfortable. For you see, we haven't always been awake through this revolution, not here within Unitarian Universalism. But if we do not face our past, we can never hope to change our future. Reverend Nancy MacDonald Ladd said something that is very important to remember as we start this journey. She says, the wonderful, deep-spirited, anti-racist organizer Mickey Scott Bay Jones has said that relationship is the sandpaper that wears away our resistance to change. Relationship is the abrasion that agitates enough to make a way forward. Relationship, consistent and ongoing, encountered across difference, smooths the way for the sacred, even as it rubs us raw. There is a holy abrasion of the spirit, born in deep relational encounters across differences. We, as congregations and as a movement, exist to be instruments of these very encounters. And I encourage you to keep these words in mind as we travel through our history. And while I'm focusing on the history of our movement since the merger in 1961, you should know that both our Unitarian and our Universalist denominations had issues around race. So this isn't exactly something new. According to the Reverend Mark Morrison Reed, who has done extensive research into our history around race, it wasn't until 2 years after the merger that the UUA General Assembly took up the issue of racial inclusiveness, and that would be 1963. The issue at hand was an amendment to the UUA Constitution that stated that member congregations must, quote, maintain a policy of admitting persons to membership without discrimination of race, color, or national origin, if they wanted to maintain their voting rights within the organization. Basically, if the congregation wanted to be able to vote at General Assembly, they must be inclusive. There was controversy about this amendment. The controversy centered on whether or not it interfered with congregational polity. Now, congregational polity is the authority, absolute authority, that individual congregations have to determine all matters concerning their governance. It was this point that our congregations argued on. Duncan Howlett, the minister of All Souls Church Unitarian in Washington, D.C., said, the question before us is not integration. On that, all of us are virtually agreed. The question is how we're going to achieve it in our kind of denomination. In freedom we shall do it, not by legislation and not by constitutional amendment. By the way, Howlett was a longtime civil rights advocate. So let's pause for a moment and talk about intent versus impact. Intention is not the same as impact. You do not get a free pass on hurting people just because it was not your intention to do harm. We must all be willing to examine the impact of our actions. If the impact of your action isn't in line with your intention, then you must change your action. Explaining, well, I didn't mean it like that, does not make the impact of your actions go away. So now let's look back at this time in our history. We had ministers and congregations saying to our siblings of color, well, of course we believe in inclusion, that's not the issue. We shouldn't put it in our legislation because that conflicts with congregational polity. You understand, of course, right? But what was it really saying? What was the impact of this statement? Was the impact stating that our congregations were holding the right of congregational polity higher than outright stating that discrimination and segregation were wrong? Now, I admit I'm looking at this with my own eyes. I was born in a privileged state where I was already accepted under the bylaws. And to me, it looks like congregational polity was more important. I can only imagine what our siblings of color felt. So how did it turn out? Well, the vote needed a 2/3 majority to pass, and the results were summarized in the 1964 UUA directory. And so I'm going to read what they said. The motion to adopt the amendment was defeated, the vote being 436 in favor and 379 against. On a motion to reconsider, the amendment was again defeated, 459 being in favor, 383 being against. By vote of the meeting, a resolution reminding churches and fellowships of their ethical responsibility to admit without discrimination was laid on the table until other general resolutions were in order. Mark Morrison Reed says that, quote, when this new resolution was introduced and debated later in the assembly, it was adopted overwhelmingly, 585 voting in favor and 6 against. So good, right? It got passed, but it didn't. Not really. What passed was a resolution, not an amendment, that reminded our congregations that they had an ethical responsibility, nothing binding. Nothing that would have set us apart by rising up and saying, as 3 years later, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. encouraged us to do, nothing that said we affirm the essential immorality of racial segregation. It appears that congregational polity was more important. Now, don't get me wrong, our polity is the bedrock of who we are. But what might have happened if we'd taken that stance? What might have happened if we had been brave enough to not let perfection get in the way of good enough? Where might we be now as a denomination, as a movement, if we'd been brave enough to see that our intentions were not lining up with our impact? We'll never know. A few years ago, I was sitting in my UU history class in seminary, and the Reverend Mark Morrison Reed, at the time an adjunct professor with Meadville Lombard, came and spoke to our class. And that day in class, he stood before us, tears in his eyes, and said, "We will never know who we are missing from here." He was referring to the period in our UU history known as the Empowerment Saga. Now, I'm going to attempt to summarize this time in our history. It is long and complicated and painful, and I will not do it justice in a simple sermon. The report from the Racial and Cultural Diversity Task Force summarized the period in this way. After much debate and controversy, the 1968 General Assembly voted to create the Black Affairs Council, or the BAC. Despite strong commitment by some individuals and congregations, suspicion, misunderstanding, and lack of funds contributed to the ultimate demise of the BAC. The majority of white Unitarian Universalists did not accept the responsibility to understand and nurture the program they had dared to embrace in 1968. In spite of the dismay of many, this lack of support for the program became a source of division between those persons committed to cultural assimilation and those who advocated self-empowerment. Events came to a head at the 1969 General Assembly in Boston, and in 1970, funding for the BAC was eliminated. These actions resulted for some people in feelings of disfranchisement, and unfortunately in the eventual departure of a significant number of African Americans, as well as white Unitarian Universalists. In their book, The Arc of the Universe is Long, Leslie Takahashi Morris, Chip Rausch, and Leon Spencer write, this promise made to BAC remains as an unpaid debt in some eyes. Again, intent versus impact. We may never know who left and didn't return, and what we as a movement have lost. But that was the 60s and 70s, a time when our country was still in the grip of the civil rights movement and figuring everything out. Surely we've moved past this. At the 1993 General Assembly in North Carolina, the focus was on race. We heard about our history as Unitarian Universalists around race. We began the process of reflection to go even deeper, to discover what we could do better. And it began to look like we were moving in the right direction. And then the party happened. Saturday night, there was to be a dance, a Thomas Jefferson birthday ball. People were supposed to come in period costume for a Thomas Jefferson themed dance. I'm gonna pause, give you a moment for that to sink in. Now, there's a lot of planning that goes into General Assembly, and know that many people brought up concerns in the weeks leading up to it. Reverend Joseph Santos Lyons described this event in his 2006 seminary thesis. He says, in 1993, a year after the Racial and Cultural Diversity Resolution established the Racial and Cultural Diversity Task Force. General Assembly was held in the Thomas Jefferson District in Charlotte, North Carolina. As part of the program, the GA Planning Committee sponsored a Thomas Jefferson Ball with instructions to come in period dress circa 1776. In the months leading up to GA, protests were issued by Unitarian Universalists, including African descent Unitarian Universalists, deeply concerned that this would mean people of color having to attend in chains as slaves, as those were their circumstances during that era. Due to miscommunication and misplaced intentions, the Thomas Jefferson Ball was still held despite concerns and communications raised in advance of GA. The ball was still held. More than 400 people chose not to attend it. Denny Davidoff was elected as moderator that day during session. She chose not to attend the dance, even though it meant skipping some official celebrations of her victories. She said, quote, "To me, it was and always will be a perfect example of how asleep we good people can be." Keith Cron, a member of the GA Planning Committee, reflected later, "We think of racism as being an overt thing. As someone who has lived in the South and has seen, as a fifth grader, my elementary school become integrated, I knew what racism was, and I was right, or half right. There are a lot of people who consciously want people of color to be second-class citizens. What I and the rest of the planning committee didn't know at the time was that much of racism is not conscious, just part of the system, and you have to be awake to see it." Intent versus impact. It would be easy to think that we have moved beyond this. It would be easy to think that now we are in 2021 and we are more aware of our behavior as Unitarian Universalists. And it would be easy to think that we have realized our intent versus our impact and that now we can do better. And it would be wrong. Sadly, it would be wrong. In March 2017, a time a colleague calls our spring disruption, it was announced that Reverend Andy Burnett was hired to replace Reverend Ken Hurto as the regional lead for the Southern region, our region. Burnett was a white male minister from Arizona, and he was hired to replace another white male minister. And I'm sure many didn't think much of it at first. After all, the 5 regional leads were all white ministers. Most of the top positions in the UUA were held by white people. When news of this was breaking, I was sitting in a Chicago hostel room with a classmate from Alabama. And we shrugged at the business as usual of hiring yet another white man for a leadership position. What got us going was that Burnett had no intention of moving from Arizona. And we felt he couldn't understand our culture here in the Southern region. And we wondered who else had applied and if there had been any other candidates from within the region. Then more news started to come out about the hiring decision. Christina Rivera, the Director of Administration and Finance at Thomas Jefferson Memorial Church, UU, in Charlottesville, Virginia, and a UUA trustee who is Chicana Latina, told colleagues at a retreat for religious professionals that she had been a finalist for the job, but was told she was not a right fit for the team. This took off within the ministerial colleague circles. An email to the board signed by 121 UU ministers and other religious professionals said, quote, "The practice of hiring white people nearly to the exclusion of hiring people of color is alarming and not indicative of the communal practice to which our faith calls us." On March 27th, UUA President Peter Morales wrote to the UUA staff and said, "There are 2 fundamental truths I want to convey. First, we are not where we ought to be in terms of the diversity of staff, particularly at the leadership level. I don't know of anyone at the UUA who disagrees with that. Second, and this seems to have been lost in the focus on the immediate situation, we have made significant progress. We need to hold both our shortcomings and our successes if we are to move forward together." Aisha Hauser, Director of Religious Education at East Shore Unitarian Church in Bellevue, Washington, and a member of the UUA Nominating Committee, said in response, "It is not enough to say we believe in equality. It is not about intention, but impact. And the impact is a white supremacy paradigm with zero accountability." Now, this whole situation did lead to the eventual resignations of a number of key staff, including Peter Morales. Many of us thought we were on the right track because we were now having these conversations about all of this. And again, many of us would be wrong. In the summer 2018 issue of UU World, it was reported that the UUA had been asked to help resolve more than 15 congregational conflicts involving religious professionals of color in just that church year. UU World also reported the other high-profile case involves an anonymous racist written message left by a parishioner at the Thomas Jefferson Memorial Church Unitarian Universalist in Charlottesville, Virginia, targeting Christina Rivera, its Director of Administration and Finance. Rivera is also a UUA trustee who was one of 3 religious educators of color who developed the white supremacy teach-in, which involved hundreds of UUA congregations since last spring. Yes, that Christina Rivera, left by a congregant at her church. In October 2018, another anonymous racist note was sent to the UUA headquarters targeting one of the leaders of the Youth Caucus. That leader, Christina Rivera's son. On December 11th, 2018, Christina Rivera resigned from her position as a UUA board trustee. Co-moderators Alondria Williams and Mr. Barb Grieve said about the resignation, quote, "We are angered and frustrated by the white supremacy culture within UUism that has some believing letters of hate and threats are acceptable forms of expression. This is not reflective of the faith either of us have been taught from childhood, and it must cease immediately." I could sadly continue. My hope is that one day this sermon will simply be about our history and what we have finally moved forward doing what Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. asked of us in 1966. My hope is that one day we will have truly instilled a world perspective, fully reaffirmed the essential immorality of racial segregation, absolutely refuted the idea that there are superior and inferior races, and fully moved into the arena of social action. We must be aware of our past. It's not even all that past, to be honest. We have a lot of work ahead of us. We can't be daunted by it. We can't give up on it. We must keep working. Mark Morrison Reed ends his book, Darkening the Doorways, with the following, and I close with it today. If Unitarian Universalism stands for love, it is wed to freedom. Freedom invites vision. Vision leads to change. Change causes anxiety. Anxiety awakens resistance. Freedom begets vision. Vision leads to change. To embrace change means welcoming someone with an open mind and responding with interest to different behavior or beliefs, rather than with a raised eyebrow, frozen smile, and silence. See that reaction for what it is, a sophisticated way of masking fear. Hold that fear at bay and let your heart lead the way. Change means discomfort, and because of that discomfort, some people will leave. They have in the past and they will again. Let them go. For those who remain and commit, the discomfort becomes bearable when we recognize it is for our benefit, that transformation is its result. Healing the systemically transmitted virus that is racism is nothing less than grace. Grace, the moment when we sense within ourselves that something broken has become whole, cannot emerge without freedom. Stasis and control are fear's bastion. Welcoming change means being open and adventurous. It asks us to celebrate the breadth of theological and social diversity Unitarian Universalism already encompasses, and then to reach beyond it. It means recapturing the excitement we once felt about the new, the wonderment, the curiosity, the openness we knew as children before fear shut it down. It means seeing diversity as a gift we cannot wait to get our hands on. Change will come whether we work for it and celebrate it, or distrust and resist it, or simply wait. Our history says it will come whether we want it to or not, and for that, we can be thankful. The revolution is here, my friends. It is time to rise up and fight against the systemic white supremacy culture inherent in our nation and sadly within our own denomination. Change is coming whether we're ready or not. Let us be aware of our past. Let us be aware of our own shortcomings. Let us be aware of our impact on others, regardless of our intent. Let us do better and be better. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Barrett, for that incredible service. It was very, very needed, well received. Thank you. And now, if you'll join with me as we extinguish the chalice, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing music today, is There Is More Love Somewhere. It's 95 and singing in the Living Tradition. It's an African-American spiritual performed by Jesse Huterman.
Love somewhere, there is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
My closing words this morning come from Isabel Wilkerson and her book Cast, which is our congregational read. One of the things she does in the book is use the metaphor for, let's say, our country or our society as a house. And these are her words. Not one of us was here when this house was built. Our immediate ancestors may have had nothing to do with it, but here we are, the current occupants of a property with stress cracks and bowed walls and fissures built into the foundation. We are the heirs to whatever is right or wrong with it. We did not erect the uneven pillars or joists, but they are ours to deal with now. And any further deterioration is, in fact, on our hands. Thank you. Go in peace.